Welcome back, and we're talking to John Broons, the family business guy. John, we started off by talking about conflicts being positives, and we've talked about the experience of play within businesses. And I suppose what we're talking about is the relationships in this, all these interrelationships going on. But it strikes me that, and I don't know if you discussed this at the conference, that it's all right when the relationships aren't too bad, they're just struggling a little bit. But what happens when the relationship has been either not formed or worse, it used to be good, they've had a big nasty clash, as some family members do, or relationships. I suppose we're asking the questions, repairing or rebuilding that. Is there stuff around that?
There was a question raised in one of the conference sessions, and I found this quite interesting, where one of the presenters was asked, so how do you resolve or improve relationships within a family? And interestingly enough, the way that the advisor or the presenter came across, he suggested that if you have no relationship with somebody and you want to create a relationship, you won't send an SMS and you won't send an email. You'll actually pick up the phone and ring the person.
Right.
So that's opening the door to a relationship.
Yes.
If you have a 30-second phone call or a minute phone call, at least the door has been opened. It doesn't mean that it's a great relationship, a deep relationship, a long relationship, or anything else, other than at least you're communicating.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
If we then go and talk for 5 minutes, or 7 minutes, or 10 minutes, that conversation, although it may be just light or something that's topical,
yes,
that you're both sharing in, you actually are increasing the volume of relationship. You're actually building a relationship that didn't exist or may not have existed for a while.
Okay.
So the length of time you're on the phone with that person, if it gets to half an hour and you're doing that once a week, then you're actually learning about the other person and they're learning about you just by conversation, which is communication. Now, half an hour, you can just be talking about the football or the races or the kids at school or whatever, and very light superficial stuff. The more subjects that you talk about in that half an hour,
yes,
the more topics that you will be able to relate to the other person with will actually take you deeper in that relationship.
So there's almost a strategy to this, starting off gentle, or just starting seems to be the big thing, but then the diversity within the conversation will then start to build the depth of the relationship and the connection you'd have to that person. Is that what you're saying?
That's the way I understood the conversation. And when it's spoken like that, it kind of seems common sense. Oh, well, I haven't rung that person for a long time. Oh, I'll forget about it. But, I'd really like to touch base, but no, I just couldn't be bothered. Then the relationship won't eventuate again.
No.
But if you take the time to pick up the phone, and it's not an SMS and it's not an email, it's not part of communication where it's a relationship thing, that's just passing on data.
Yes.
Right? So if you want to actually hear a tone of voice, face-to-face is even better.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah,
face-to-face is the perfect thing because you're getting a lot more information.
Yes.
But if it's just a telephone call, opening the door by making the first phone call is a great way to open a door. If the person doesn't ring you back, that doesn't mean that they don't want the relationship. They may be just as busy or busier than you.
Yep.
And if they're not as busy, maybe the relationship isn't as high a priority to them as it is to you. But if you ring back in a few days or in a week or 2 weeks and you have another conversation, then you're starting to build a relationship.
And what about the relationships that have been damaged? Did they touch on that at all and trying to rebuild a damaged relationship, or is the tactic the same? Someone's actually got to want to repair it in the first place.
I think here it's pretty much how, you're asking my ideas here. I think it would be the same from the point of view of it needs to be voice contact, at least by a telephone,
Yes.
rather than SMS or a message, which if you're trying to rebuild a relationship is not the way to go about it.
No.
So face-to-face would be better. But again, if you have a conversation that is only 30 seconds, at least you've had a conversation.
Yes.
And maybe another day or two later, you might want to have another phone conversation to try and rebuild some broken pathways.
Yeah.
If you can get past that and say, okay, well, whatever happened in the past, and I want to rebuild something, and the other person chooses to come along the journey, then the conversation will start to flow. It may become two-way again, and then the more conversation points again will take it deeper.
When you're called in to help families in business resolve some of their issues and some of their conflicts and just some of their sticking points, I suppose, they just want an outsider's opinion to help them past a certain thing. You obviously must come across these relationships that are damaged or fragmented, and they're probably around face to face. And I know you've been in those situations at the boardroom table, and they're sort of like that at each other. How do you control and how do you put in those control points to help those family members may not become the best of friends, but at least become functional enough that they can actually contribute in a positive way to this family?
Generally, how do I make that happen is I'm actually trying to be a facilitator. If I'm in the room, I'm able to facilitate the conversation.
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah.
To call time out, because sometimes we need to call time out.
Yep.
And I've had to do that once or twice.
I know.
But in those kind of instances, it's all of a sudden, well, hang on a second, do you realise what just happened? And I'll ask each of the people involved, I'll say, well, what do you think made you think that way? What was the button that got pressed? And the other person is, why did you press that button? Did you even realise that you pressed a button?
Yeah.
So from that point of view, I'm trying to unpack it for them to learn, to be aware of it themselves, that they can do this.
Yes.
And that the subconscious gets involved.
Interesting that analogy you say, and I know you've said we all wear buttons and some people just know where they are and press them. So really when you're looking at that, because of your skill set and what you can recognise, you're trying to make them understand, one, for me to understand what my button actually is so I can disengage it myself, and to let the other person understand. So it's like, well, is that really good what you're doing? So they perhaps go, oh no, I won't do that because I know that's actually what I'm doing. Do you think sometimes they just do it unconsciously? They don't realise
it's
the
almost
pattern?
all the time it's unconscious. Almost all the time it's unconscious.
It's just a pattern of behaviour that's developed.
Yeah, we've grown up that way. It's been imprinted in our minds since we were kids that this is how we acted, and it's repetition will build it, and it becomes habit, and we don't even know that we're building habits a lot of the time. So sometimes it manifests in the middle of a family meeting and it can get messy.
And that's why I know you do the time out, but part of your strategy is then to almost be the circuit breaker. So the buttons, you start removing the buttons from the cults.
It doesn't always work. I may not be the appropriate person.
Yeah.
And sometimes these individuals in families, they're in such a place of anger or frustration or fear that it's really hard for them to step into a place where they have a clear mind to be able to understand.
Yes.
So sometimes you just can't shake the person to say, just listen. We have to be able to communicate at a level where they're understanding.
Yes. Looking at that, is that the skill set you teach the head of the household, or whoever happens to be in charge of the board? You try to educate them on these things so they get the skill sets?
I try and get everybody to understand this, because it doesn't just work within the family business. It works at a wider community level as well.
Yes. Wow. What a trip you've had. When's the next one, John?
The next global conference at FFI next year in October. I think it'll be in London.
In London. And so, I guess, silly question to ask if you're going?
Well, I'd like to get there.
Yes.
We'll see.
You'll see.
We'll see. I would very much like to get there.
If someone's listening now and they've got a family business, and I know you always say once you've seen one family business, you only ever seen one, but you've got these family businesses, have you found over the time that there are trends, there are patterns of sticking points for families that you've been able to get them past so they can get on to that next level?
I'd like to generalise, but it's really hard, Mike. There's a family, if I relate to you half a dozen different client types of families that I've been working with, one can be a father, daughter, brother-in-law, where another one would be mum and dad and the kids, where there's 4 kids but 2 are in the business, 2 aren't in the business.
Right.
Another one would be grandmother, son-in-law runs the business, and there's some daughters. There's another one where a father and 3 sons. So the dynamics in each of these cases, the businesses are very different businesses in each of these instances. The families are very different. There's religious backgrounds that are different. There's cultural backgrounds, because we're in Australia, you know, we've got a real mixing pot of different cultures. So there's some real cultural stuff that comes into these kind of conversations.
Yeah.